Good evening. Hello, everyone. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Welcome to those from Wat Buddha Nusorn and all those who are regularly attending as well. Yeah, this is a special night. This is the first of the year of the Tuesday evenings at the Wat, although it's virtual, and also the first Tuesday here at Dhammadharini. So we will start soon with usually now the program. We start with the meditation and then the chanting, Riss. Is that how it usually goes? Those at the Wat, is that the usual?
Usually, we start with the chanting and then the meditation, followed by the talk. But you can do it in whatever order you like. Yeah.
Okay, we can do it that way. I think it's better just to keep the regular pattern going. I just since I don't, this isn't a usual thing. I don't have that pattern in my memory banks clearly. So thank you for clarifying that. We will then start out with chanting. We're just going to do very simple chanting, just the preliminary homage, and we'll do that in English and in Pali. And if you know it, you don't have to look at the there's going to screen share here. Here we go. And Seminary Tavira is kindly posting it for us. And I guess it's not small enough to have the whole thing visible at once. So you'll just have to scroll it. Yeah. Okay. So she'll scroll it. If you know it by heart, then we're just alternating between Pali and English. Just mute yourselves and you can chant along. And then after that, we'll have 30 minutes of meditation. And then we can start the Dhamma, the talk. So I'm going to be turning towards the altar. And if you know it, you can turn towards the altar at your location. And if not, just you can bow towards the virtual. And let's see if we can get that so I'm not in the way. I'm going to turn it more towards the altar then. Okay, let's see if we can get that more in the foreground. Yo so Bhagava Araham Samma Sambuddho, to the Blessed One, the Lord who fully attained perfect enlightenment, Swakato Yena Bhagavata Dhammo, and the teaching which he expounded so well, Supatipanno Yasa Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho, and to the Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, Kamayam Bhagavantam Sadamam Sasankham To these the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, we sakare hiyataraham aropite abhipujayama. We render with offerings our rightful homage. Sadhu no bante bhagava suchira parini bhutopi. It is well for us that the Blessed One, having attained liberation, Hachima Janata Nukampa Manasa, still had compassion for later generations. Ime Sakare Dugatapana Karabute Patiganhatu. May these simple offerings be accepted. Araham Samtigaratam Hitaya Sukaya. For our long-lasting benefit and for the happiness it gives us. Araham Sama Sambuddho Bhagawa, the Lord, the perfectly enlightened and blessed one, Bhutam Bhagavantam Abhivademi. I render homage to the Buddha, the blessed one. Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo, the teaching so completely explained by him. Dhammam namasami, I kneel to the Dhamma. Supatipanno Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho, the Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well. Sangham namami, I bow to the Sangha. Andamayam Buddhasa Bhagavato Pubabhaga Namam Karam Karomase.
Now let us pay preliminary homage to the Buddha.
Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. So now get yourselves in a comfortable position for sitting meditation. And we'll sit for about 30 minutes. And I'll give you a little bit of guidance. I think all of you are pretty experienced at meditation. So get in a comfortable position that you can hold for 30 minutes. Upright is best. Taking care to get the body and especially the spine in proper alignment. And just really getting a sense of the body in the environment that you are in, the room you are in. Sensing the contact of the body against what's supporting you. Anywhere there's contact, the weight of the arms against the lap, or if you're touching the sides of your body, anywhere there's contact with the clothing, the air, temperature of the air, just getting a sense of the body. And then you can just start scanning upwards from the feet, really sensing the feet, especially if they're in contact with the floor or against somewhere on the legs or thighs. And then just gradually bringing the awareness upwards, kind attention to the body, careful attention. Again, the pressure of the body against what's supporting it. The buttocks. And the hips. Sense the expanding and contracting of the abdomen with the breathing, just the natural rhythm of the breath. Even around to the low back, you might feel that expansion, sides of the body. And bringing the awareness upwards, the chest, and feeling the rib cage all the way around, actually rising with the breath. And shoulder blades. Then the arms being moved gently by the expansion of the body. Breathing fully. And if you don't sense that, it's okay. The breathing is lighter. And bringing the awareness upwards, up to the back of the head, around the sides. Really sensing the top of the head. And allowing the awareness to flow downwards over the top of the head, down to the forehead. Inviting everything to be at ease. We're just giving your kind attention to how things are. The eyes slightly closed. Inviting the cheeks and the jaws to be at ease. You might sense the nose and the nostrils, the passing of the air, just as its own rhythm. The breath. And the lips slightly closed. And down over the neck, again, the front of the neck and shoulders. All the way down the arms, you can go one at a time. And sensing the touch of the body, arms against the body. And inviting the hands to be at ease. Nothing to do, just to be at ease. And then back upwards again. And the top of the chest. And bring the awareness to the expanding and contracting of the chest with the breathing again. And this may be a good time to shift the attention to the breath. Somewhere along the breath cycle, or the entire breath cycle. And if you care to continue downwards, you can continue scanning the body as a whole, down again to the feet and up again. Or just staying with the rhythm of the breath as it is. And if you're aware of the rising of thoughts, just allow the thoughts to pass. Bring the awareness down back to the body, the breath. No need to get involved in thinking. Just allow it to arise and pass. And just with kindness, whenever we're aware of it, bring our awareness back. To our object of meditation. And we'll continue in silence for another 18 minutes. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Bhutam dhammam sangham namasami. Excuse me, I'm going to rearrange things a little bit. I didn't after the chanting, so I'm going to try to get things a little bit more better aligned here. This is the challenge. It's getting everything in alignment, proper order, internally, externally. This is part of our practice. It's just trying to have things in alignment with what's wholesome, what's helpful. So this evening, I'd like to talk about the 7 factors of awakening or enlightenment, bojjhangas, the satasambojjhangas. So one way of looking at them is they're factors for awakening, and then eventually they develop into factors of awakening. So we're going to think about what's actually supportive of these factors of awakening. And in the sutta discussion last Sunday, I covered the nivaranas, which are the hindrances which obstruct the factors of awakening. They obstruct samadhi. They can be obstruction to any wholesome state. They can be obstructions in our daily life. And I'm just going to list them and not get into them too much tonight, because I'd like to spend more time with the awakening factors. But the first of the hindrances is sense desire. And the second one is ill will. And the third is restlessness and remorse, or there could be excitement and anxiety. There's a lot of ways to translate them. But, and then the fourth one is doubt, or like sometimes it's called skeptical doubt. And the last one, I'm sorry. The fourth one is actually dullness and drowsiness, and the last one is doubt. So when we were looking at what was feeding these hindrances, you consider about what's actually supporting these hindrances, and know they're arising in your mind, and know what will de-nourish them or starve them. So if we know what's supporting sensual desire, then we know not to feed it that. So a lot of it is this observation of our own mind. So ayoniso manasikara is the improper attention or unwise attention. So tending unwisely to these things that arise in our mind of desire, arises in our mind, and we are feeding it with just kind of fantasizing about what we want, or thinking about all the wonderful aspects of what we want, you know, to get the beauty of it, the taste of it, or whatever it is. We're feeding that desire. So we learn to let go of that, and also to consider the disadvantages of these hindrances, and along with ill will. If we're obsessing about what's unpleasant or annoying or whatever it is, irritating, then that's going to feed the ill will. So we start seeing this in ourselves and able to start letting go of that, and then considering the disadvantage of anger and ill will, and then we may bring up loving kindness. So you can bring up attending carefully, wisely to the opposite, or even to the hindrance itself. But if it's yoniso manasikara, this is our wise attention, our careful attention. There's a lot of ways it's translated, but attending carefully, wisely to the hindrances themselves helps us to let go of them too, because we see their harm. Excuse me a second. And the same with the other hindrances, restlessness and worry. We can see how it's not really of any use, really. It's not going to really solve the problem. You can look at the disadvantage. You can look at how the mind, you can also sense the mind becoming unsettled before it gets into a full-blown hindrance. And then this is through our observation. Then we know what is helpful to calm the mind. We start observing in ourselves that. So that's the opposite of the restlessness and worry. And then the dullness and drowsiness. There's a number of things that are in the suttas to overcome that, but not to give in to the delightfulness of sleeping and possibly changing position. And then the skeptical doubt, or the uncertainty, not to just kind of obsess about wanting to get the answer right away, and not to obsess about what's confusing to you, but investigating it wisely, kept finding, discussing what may be confusing to you about the Dhamma with somebody you really trust that can help you with resolving the uncertainty. So that's really briefly about dealing with the hindrances. And the reason why I'm bringing them up again is because they are in direct opposition to the awakening factors. So a lot of teachers really, at the beginning of a meditation retreat especially, they will go over the hindrances and bring people's awareness to them and help with abandoning them. And once the mind can be clear of these hindrances, then it helps foster the factors of awakening. So I started talking about yoniso manasikara, and this is a very supportive quality to develop for developing the awakening factors, or factors supportive to awakening. And yoniso, yoni is a womb, and the translation is womb or origin. But yoniso as an adjective, or maybe adverb, I guess, or is part of the compound of this word, is often translated as wisely, like a yoniso, patisanka yoniso is like wisely reflecting. So when we're thinking about the monastics are thinking about their requisites, there's that phrase yoniso. Now I've lost it. Yoniso patisankara. Vindapata. So about any of the four requisites, we're reflecting wisely. And one article I was reading, this yoniso is a penetrative, thorough attention. Yoniso manasikara is a really penetrative attention. So this is another part of the getting to the source. This is another aspect of yoniso, is getting to the origin or the source. So this really penetrative attention, really paying attention to really clearly what's going on internally, actually, and seeing the causes for ourselves. So this is an aspect of having to how to dispel unwholesome states, and also how to bring up for ourselves what is helpful to ourselves to bring up these wholesome states. So the yoniso manasikara starves the hindrances, and it nourishes or fuels the bojjhangas. It's and so the bojjhangas are nourished by yoniso manasikara, the arising and the establishment of the mental states that are directly responsible for the awakening factors. These conditions are supported to awakening and are nourished by proper attention. So this proper attention is one of the things that nourish the bojjhangas. And another thing that I've been looking at the suttas, and one thing that I saw that was listed as mentioned as a base or a support for the awakening factors was our sila. So our ethical conduct is a supportive factor. So really purifying our sila gives us a mind that's free from remorse, brings up joy. So it's one of the bases of support that I saw listed. So I think many of you know these factors of awakening, but I'll go through the list of them, and then we can talk about them a little bit more. So the first one is sati sampajanya, and that's the awakening factor of mindfulness. And the fuel for the rising and development is the sutta says that there are grounds for this, that there and then proper attention, yoniso manasikara, for the supportive factors are what fuels or what nourishes mindfulness as a factor for awakening. So you wonder, well, what does that mean? And so we can observe within ourselves what is supportive to mindfulness. And one thing is continuous mindfulness through the day. So if we're practicing with sati sampajanya, Bhante Sujato translates that as situational awareness. So we're aware of our activities through the day wisely, not just kind of mechanically then that's a support for mindfulness. Just the, just bringing our awareness to what we're doing, being our awareness to what's arising in our minds. All the foundations, all 4 foundations of mindfulness support sati sampajanya. And then Dhamma Vijaya Sambojjhanga, that's translated as the investigation of principles, which is what Mate Sujato, how he translates it, or investigation of states. And the fuel for that is really looking at the qualities, investigating proper attention. It's actually proper attention, yoniso manasikara, to qualities of the mind, such as kusala, akusala, that's wholesome or unwholesome, or skillful or unskillful, so-called bright and dark qualities, superior and inferior qualities of mind, blameful and blameless qualities of mind. So we're looking at what's arising in the mind and really identifying them clearly. So that it's actually was listed as a denourishment for doubt, is by really examining these qualities and really discerning clearly what's wholesome, what's unwholesome, or skillful and unskillful. Just really investigating them. And then Virya Sampajanya, Virya Bojjhanga, I'm sorry, Sambojjhanga. That is the awakening factor of energy, Virya, and what's listed as a support for them is initiative, persistence, and exertion. So initiative is, the word is aramba dhatu, and that's bringing up the energy. It's initiating the energy, encouraging it to arise. So it's kind of like bringing it up and sustaining it and maintaining it. But if we're the previous 2 Bojjhangas help bring up the virya. If we're consistently mindful, we're persistently mindful and investigating. Also, our interest in investigation of what's arising in our mind, and also the dispelling of the hindrances by this kind of mindfulness and investigation, then naturally the energy will start rising up. And then from that, piti, and piti sampajanya is a rapture, is one way of translating piti, and other translation is joy. And then what fuels that is in the sutta, it says there are grounds or qualities that are basis for support for this piti. So as I was saying, the previous qualities, but you can also, if you consider your sila and non-remorse as bringing up joy, anything that in your daily life you can bring up rapture and joy from wholesome activities. But in a sitting posture, the settledness of mind and quietude of mind is one of the things that's supporting of the piti. As the mind settles and is free from a lot of mental activity, and the virya is bringing up some energy but subsiding a little bit, but then the piti, the joy, will start arising. It's a little different quality of energy, but it's energetic. Then that calms down a little bit, and we have pasadi sampajanya, and that's calmness or tranquility as a enlightenment factor. And it's interesting that if you think about joy and calm as factors that are supportive or factors of enlightenment, it's quite encouraging, actually, that this path is a path of joy and peace. And these are qualities of awakening, as well as something that supports our awakening. So I think that's quite beautiful. So in the sutta, it says there is tranquility of body and mind. There's tranquility of body and there's tranquility of mind. And so proper attention, wise attention to these, both with the piti and with the tranquility. If we have this yoniso manasikara directed towards noticing that there's the piti has arisen, and noticing when the tranquility or the pasadi has arisen, just being aware of that, being aware of the tranquility in the body and in the mind. And this is a supporting factor for them to develop. So we see them arising, and we nourish them with our careful attention, our kind attention. This actually, Bhikkhu Bodhi, Bhante Bodhi translates yoniso manasikara as careful attention. So the caring, careful, wise attention to these things helps nourish them. And then there is samadhi sampajanya. And samadhi is the old traditional way of translating samadhi is concentration. And then there are teachers that we love that really object to that translation. And so Bhante Sujato translates it as immersions, samadhi as immersion. And Ajahn Brahm likes the word stillness. And there's collectedness of mind. And actually a supporting factor of samadhi is freedom from distraction. So the mind coming together on the object, collecting on the object, freed from distraction. The preceding factors help support samadhi. Actually, the 7 factors previous to the to samadhi as one of the Noble Eightfold Paths, one of the factors of the Noble Eightfold Path. So the path factors, the Noble Eightfold Path, the preceding path factors are supports for samadhi. So if we're developing the Noble Eightfold Path, then these path factors are one of the aims is to support samadhi. One of the benefits, maybe I should say, of developing the Noble Eightfold Path is that all the factors are supportive of samadhi. And then upekkha sampajanya is equanimity. And what's fuel or nutriment for the arising and development of upekkha sampajanya? The sutta again says there are grounds for the arising of upekkha. And then our wise attention, our manaso a yoniso manasikara as support for that. So just the awareness of mind, what is a supportive factor? What's helpful? So some of that's our own exploration. But the previous sampajanyas are in support of the upekkha also. So at this point, I wanted to turn to the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And that is developed in preceding the arising of the 7 awakening factors. And this is, you'll see this in the suttas. And it's not a coincidence that sati sampajanya is the first of the awakening factors, and we're developing the 4 foundations of mindfulness. This precedes that these qualities becoming awakening factors. And it's Ajahn Brahmali points out that it might sound a little daunting, but he points out that if you practice anapanasati, that fulfills the 4 establishments of mindfulness, and that precedes the bhojangas, the sata sampajanyas. So, I mean, sata, bhojangas. So, but I wanted to note that in the all of the foundations of mindfulness, they talk about contemplating body and body, feeling and feeling, mind and mind, mind objects and mind objects, and you observe the nature for them to arise, the nature for them to pass, and then also there may be the bare knowledge of the presence of these 4, the body in the body, feelings and feelings, just to establish enough mindfulness to the knowledge that there is a body, there are feelings, there is mind, there are mind objects. So, and so this is awareness of things as they are, but there is a bit of investigation here. We're seeing the nature of them to arise, and we're seeing the nature of them to vanish or pass. So, and what's interesting too, to me, what I've been when doing this investigation and contemplating this and looking at the suttas, is that in Dhammanupassana, we're contemplating the bhojangas. This is one of the very first contemplation is of the nivarnas, the hindrances. And you see how if the hindrance is there, and how the hindrance arise, and how the hindrances pass. So you get to a point where you're in your meditation where you can just be aware of their arising and passing. But this, I always feel like it. You've had to do some really investigation, and that deep investigation that you are actively abandoning. So you know how they come up. You've seen it in yourself, and so there's a point where it's just because you've done this work, then you see them rising and you see them passing. You're just like, okay, I see you there, restlessness, or it's starting to merge. I see it how it emerges, and then you're also aware of how it can pass. So it says there's this word pajanati, which is he knows, but it could be he or she or they know how they arise, know how they pass. So, and knowing if they're there or not, if they're present or not. And so the same pattern is for the Bojjhangas, but more about understanding how they're also brought up and developed. So the Dhammanupassana is contemplating mind objects in mind objects, knowing or understanding, which I was saying pajanati, or clearly knowing that an enlightenment factor is present or not present, and it's internally in oneself, how they come to arise and how the arisen enlightenment factors come to fulfillment by development. So this is the understanding of that. So it's Dhammanupassana, and it's a understanding mind objects. And so we're seeing the Bojjhangas as mind objects. So I thought that was interesting to bring into our discussion. And then I started thinking, I was realizing in the Anapanasati Sutta, the verse the Lord Buddha talks about developing the four foundations of mindfulness, how they're fulfilled in the practice of mindfulness of in and out breathing. So he goes through those, but then it culminates in the fulfillment of the 7 enlightenment factors. So there's this training that the Buddha speaks about, and I can't get into detail about that. It's quite a lot. But if you consider how this practice of Anapanasati, it ends with the Dhammanupassana, and I'll just read that previous. It says, bhikkhus, on whatever occasion a bhikkhu trains thus, I shall breathe in contemplating impermanence, trains I shall breathe out contemplating impermanence, trains I shall breathe in contemplating fading away, trains I shall breathe in contemplating fading away, breathe out, trains I shall breathe in contemplating cessation, trains I shall breathe out contemplating cessation, trains I shall breathe in contemplating relinquishment, trains thus I shall breathe out contemplating relinquishment. On that occasion, a bhikkhu abides contemplating mind objects as mind objects, ardent, fully aware, and mindful, having put away covetousness and grief for the world. So having abandoned that, some people say that covetousness and grief is shorthand for the hindrances. So we're giving up desire and aversion, and the other hindrances can be subsumed in that. So they've abandoned unwholesome qualities, and having seen with wisdom the abandoning of covetousness and grief, they closely looks on with equanimity. That is why on that occasion, a bhikkhu, bhikkhuni, lay disciple abides contemplating mind objects as mind objects, ardent, fully aware, and mindful, having put away covetous and grief for the world. So that is how mindfulness of breathing is developed and cultivated and fulfills the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So this is just the last foundation, but I thought that was kind of interesting how it leads into, it's like you get to the point of actually awakening itself with this contemplating impermanence, really seeing impermanence clearly, and cessation and relinquishment. So this is really this is on the brink, really, of awakening here. And so then the Lord Buddha continues, and how bhikkhus do the 4 foundations of mindfulness developed and cultivated fulfill the 7 enlightenment factors. I'm reading Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation, Bhante Bodhi's translation. Bhikkhus, on whatever occasion a bhikkhu abides contemplating the body as a body, ardent, fully aware, and mindful, having put away covetous and grief for the world, on that occasion, unremitting mindfulness is established in him or her. On whatever occasion, unremitting mindfulness is established in a person. I'm throwing in my own words. On that occasion, the mindfulness enlightenment factor is aroused in them, and they develop it. And by development, it comes to fulfillment in them. So this is it's kind of like this cascade effect or something, where one thing is leading to the other. The fulfillment of the 4 foundations of mindfulness, abandoning the unwholesome qualities and bringing up these wholesome qualities, and the unremitting mindfulness being established in someone, and that brings up the mindfulness enlightenment factor, and that's aroused. It says aroused, it's brought up, it's aroused, and then they develop it, and by the development, it comes to fulfillment. Abiding thus mindful, they investigate and examine that state with wisdom and embark upon a full inquiry into it. So they're looking back on that, the enlightenment factor of mindfulness, actually. On whatever occasion, abiding thus mindful, a person, it says a bhikkhu, bhikkhuni, lay disciple, investigates and examines that state with wisdom and embarks upon a full inquiry into it. On that occasion, the investigation of states enlightenment factor is aroused in them, and they develop it. And by development, it comes to fulfillment. It's just beautiful, actually. Embarks upon a full inquiry into it. I like that translation. It's quite nice. So this is actually quite energetic if you think about it. It's quite invigorating, this investigation. If you're really interested in something and this energy comes up, actually, and in one who investigates and examines that state with wisdom and embarks upon a full inquiry into it, tireless energy is aroused. On whatever occasion, tireless energy is aroused in bhikkhu, bhikkhuni, lay disciple who investigates and examines that state with wisdom and embarks upon a full inquiry into it. On that occasion, the energy enlightenment factor is aroused in them, and they develop it, and by development, it comes to fulfillment in them. And then, of course, it continues. This is one thing supporting the next thing, the next factor in one who has aroused energy, unworldly rapture arises on whatever occasion. Unworldly rapture arises in a bhikkhu, bhikkhuni, lay disciple who has aroused energy. On that occasion, the rapture enlightenment factor is aroused in them, and they develop it. And by development, it comes to fulfillment in them. So it isn't like kind of like a step ladder where we step on mindfulness and then we step onto the next step of investigation of states and leave mindfulness behind. And then we go to energy. It's not like that. They're all really reinforcing and supporting one another, but one will be more predominant or will be experiencing it more strongly. So in one who is rapturous, the body and the mind become tranquil. On whatever occasion the body and mind become tranquil in a bhikkhu who is rapturous, on that occasion, the tranquility enlightenment factor is aroused in them, and they develop it. And by the development, it comes to fulfillment in them. So this is being aware of the subtle change in the energy. As I was saying, if you were supporting these factors by our yoniso manasikara, by our kind attention, so we will be developing them in this way. At first, it may be more intentional, but as it seems here, as the sutta is describing it, it's just we've gotten the ball rolling, kind of, and it's a process in itself that's unfolding within us, and we're tending to it wisely. In one whose body is tranquil and one who feels pleasure, the mind becomes concentrated. The mind goes to stillness or to immersion, or there's also a unity of mind, collectedness of mind. It's really not a good translation for samadhi. So the mind enters samadhi. On whatever occasion the mind attains samadhi in a bhikkhu, bhikkhuni, lay disciple whose mind is tranquil and feels pleasure. On that occasion, the samadhi bojjhanga, bojjhanga, the enlightenment factor of samadhi is aroused in them, and they develop it, and by development, it comes to fulfillment in them. They closely look on with equanimity at the mind, thus in stillness and immersion. And that, on whatever occasion, bhikkhu, bhikkhuni, lay disciple closely looks on with equanimity at the mind, thus in samadhi, on that occasion, the equanimity enlightenment factor is aroused in them, and they develop it, and by development, it comes to fulfillment. And then it continues. It started out with whatever occasion they abide, contemplating body and body, ardent, fully aware. It goes to contemplating feelings and feelings, ardent, fully aware, and mindful, having put away covetousness and grief for the world, and so on for the other. So then it would be mind and feelings and feelings, mind and mind objects and mind objects. And then it goes through all the enlightenment factors in the same cascading way. So on whatever occasion a bhikkhu abides, contemplating mind objects as mind objects, fully aware and mindful, having put away covetous and grief for the world. It goes on, just the equanimity, enlightenment factors aroused in them, they develop it, and by the development, it comes to fulfillment. And that is how the four foundations of mindfulness is developed and cultivated. Foundations of mindfulness developed and cultivated fulfill the seven enlightenment factors. So these are all supportive of one another. And like I was saying, that we can be aware of these awakening factors before they become fully developed into actual awakening. They can be factors for awakening, so we can do things that are supportive to all of them. And it seems like mindfulness is one of the key supporting factors, and abandoning the hindrances. These are really good starting points, but also being aware of are these factors present in us, and at some level or another? Are we, do we have some degree of mindfulness? And the investigation of states are something, these two we can actually work at cultivating, and energy as well. And these qualities will bring up the other factors. And we can notice, when we're sitting, if we have a feeling of joy, or I don't know, if you experience in your meditation when the mind becomes more peaceful, and feeling in the body of rapture or joy, and the mind and body becoming more still and quiet and peaceful. So when you start noticing these things in yourself, that's our careful attention, our yoniso manasikara will perceive that and nurture it, and help us with development and eventually fulfillment of them. So I offer this for your reflection, and I'll open it now for discussion and questions. And I'm going to change the view here.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
So, and if you don't particularly want your image on the screen, you can, just turn your camera off. So thank you for your kind attention. And this is the best of my understanding of these from my exploration internally and then externally in the suttas, and listening to teachers that I respect. So with that disclaimer, is there any questions or comments? Oh, Richard has his hand up. You can unmute yourself.
Yes. Hello. This Anapanasati Sutta, that section that you were going through at the end, those states, those factors, doing the inquiry in your mind, and then joy arising, right? And then concentration, right? And then equanimity. Those are the 4 jhanas. Your mind is actually starting using the Anapanasati process and contemplating, using the mindfulness contemplation of seeing the body as a body, etc. through that process. I prefer the word sensation rather than feeling, because Buddha says very specifically it's just pain, pleasure, or neutral, right? So it's the sensation that you get from your senses, the sensations. The next one is chitta. Chitta means states of mind. So I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm concentrated, I'm unconcentrated. That's what you're looking at in that factor. And then the last one, which he translates as mind factors, is Dhamma. If you look at the Pali, it really means like the 3 characteristics, right? Everything is constantly changing. This causes our unhappiness, suffering. Why? Because we're looking for a self where there isn't one. Okay, it's because it's non-self. So because everything's constantly changing, it's like trying to reach into water and grab a handful, Okay, nope, I didn't get it. Okay, nope, I didn't get it. So it's just a constant frustration, going on and on and on. So doing those contemplations, one can then enter into the jhana. And that's why it follows that very specific thing up until one achieves equanimity. In equanimity, one forgets the breath. You see what I'm saying? So, and from that point, one can go into the formless experiences, which are really just, they're further refinements of the 4th jhana, because in the 4th jhana, one has forgot about the body and the breath temporarily, right? When they're in equanimity. So in that state, one is able to kind of like begin the process of separating oneself from the lower elements and experiencing space, boundless cognition, etc., like that. And anyways, does that make sense?
Well, yeah, I didn't want to go in so much into the Anapanasati Sutta because I was focusing tonight with a limited time frame and trying to bring out the point that we can be aware of them starting to emerge, these 7 enlightenment factors. And certainly the jhanas can be an enlightenment factor, but until they're fully developed in a particular way, they are supports for our investigation once our mind is really clear and we emerge from a jhana. This is where insight can arise. So, but I didn't want to complicate things with so much detail. And the Dhammanupassana isn't just limited to the 3 characteristics. It's really looking at the objects of the mind as it's just like it describes looking at the hindrances and seeing their arising and seeing their passing. So this would be the impermanence aspect of them. You could look at
I wasn't indicating, pardon me for one second, I wasn't indicating that only. I was just giving that as an example of Dharma. Okay.
Okay.
But
anyway,
so the nature of objective reality.
Yeah. So it's their specific Dhamma, our objects of mind that are delineated in the Satipatthana. And so that, I don't know. I was just for the purposes of this discussion, I was trying to limit it to a little bit more. And I see somebody at Wat Bhutanasort has their hands in Anjali for, they want to say something?
Yes,
Hey,
hi.
can I just say one more thing? Excuse me. Can I didn't finish. I forgot to say one thing, which is equanimity Buddha describes in many places as purity of mindfulness. So from the beginning practices of mindfulness up through equanimity, you're purifying the process until you finally get to pure mindfulness at that point. Anyways, that's all I wanted to add. I just forgot it. It just came to me. Thank you.
Okay. Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay, my question is you painted a really clear and vivid picture of how the whole process kind of gains momentum until you reach the 7 factors of enlightenment. Now, what you mentioned is four characteristics, not the characteristics, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, kind of through awareness. So I'm trying to get a picture in my mind because I'm kind of sort of new to this practice, and there's a lot of progress I'd like to make. And this sounds very interesting. So when you were talking about the 4 foundations of mindfulness, now it kind of trickles back to all these other like, I don't know if you're going to make a flow chart or a different chart, or just to put it intellectually, how certain things open up and expand, and you go into this area and that area, and it just kind of has a blossoming. It's kind of like the blossoming of a lotus. But am I going to need a teacher? Do I talk to Luang about this, or because I don't think I can do this on my own. I mean, it sounds like a lot to take on, and I really want to do it because it looks like it's worth it in this lifetime. You know, if I could do it. So through my own natural inclinations or intuition, will it lead me to like the Anapanasati Sutta, or to another area? You know, it's just, what do you trust, and where do you get the guide? Is the Buddha the guide on some level, or is it an instructor? Is it friends, or could you give me some clue? Because I kind of, how would that look for someone who's trying to make progress?
I think yeah. So we're kind of jumping to really the fulfillment of the path here, with the Bojjhangas unfolding. But I think one thing to do is consider that the Noble Eightfold Path is Sila Samadhi Panya. So if we're working with developing our Sila, our moral or ethical conduct, and if we're working with developing the calmness and stillness of mind by abandoning unwholesome states and really recognizing the wholesome in ourselves, and then the wisdom will arise. So if we're working on these things, you can look at, you don't have to make it very complicated for yourself. If you start out with really working with really foundational aspects of the path, and I think, yes, what you're asking about seeking advice from Lumpur or trusted people that you respect that are on the path, that you feel like they're at least ahead of you in the game. So seeking advice, but really, if we're not keeping our ethical conduct, we're not going to go anywhere. So the sutta, the very first sutta in the section in the connected discourses on the enlightenment factors, the very first sutta says that our ethical conduct is what's supportive of the enlightenment factors. So we start out with really purifying our behavior through body, speech, and mind. And then from that, the other things can grow. But actually, this is based on right view, which is the first of the Noble Eightfold Path. That if we recognize there is the wholesome and there's the unwholesome, then that's going to take us a long way. And then we see these through body, speech, and mind. We abandon the unwholesome. We cultivate the wholesome. And this is supports. We're developing conditions that are going to lead us to our the ability for our mind to settle. And the mind will settle. And then the wisdom it'll give, when we've abandoned the unwholesome and the mind is clear, settled, calm, then the wholesome factors will start arising. So we set these foundations down, and then this other work of the Satipatthana and the awakening factors will be more accessible to us. And I think, yes, seeking teachers to help you along the path. We can't do it by ourselves. Oh, another supportive factor for the 7 factors of awakening is spiritual friendship. So if you have spiritual friends and you're working with abandoning the unwholesome and bringing up the wholesome, then you're doing the groundwork and things will unfold on their own. And then, yeah, I did jump. This is like a big jump. But like I was saying, we can start out by working with mindfulness. Mindfulness is also, if we work on any aspect, like in our daily life, our mindfulness of the breathing, any of these, we're starting to get the ball rolling and developing the Satipatthana and the awakening factor. So it doesn't, we just take it one step at a time. We can't think of leaping too far, I guess, would be, yeah, I would say to try to keep it as simple as possible for yourself and really see where we are on the path. If we, if I walk out the door and I know I have to turn left and start heading in that direction, I can't think about where I'm going to be 20 miles from now. You know what I mean? So we have to take one step at a time. And certainly working with the Sila, Samadhi, Panya is the real basis of our path. So I hope that's helpful for you. I don't want to make it too confusing for you. Sukhi Hotu, may you be happy and peaceful.
Yeah, actually, Carl has a very good question. In fact, I was actually going to do that, but I just found a whole bunch of flowchart online. If you go on a Google search, you can actually find a whole bunch of flowchart that basically outline the basic framework on that already. So initially, I think a few years ago, I was going to create something like this for Luang Por, but I never got to finish that. And then I've subsequently found a lot of them online. So yeah, they are readily available.
Mm-hmm. So this is just like a map. And like I was saying, you got to start out by maybe even getting dressed and putting on your shoes and making sure you've got your backpack full of the right supplies before you head out the door. I mean, you got to start out with really basic things that are supportive to your journey. So spiritual friends, keeping your sila, doing wholesome activities are going to support the mind to be able to do this work. So, yeah, no, the flow, like the flow charts, we might be helpful to help. But you can take one aspect of that flow chart and really work on it well. Like it's, you got to take some key elements like mindfulness and, like I'm saying, the sila, but that's based on right view. The sila is based on right view, so it all intersects. I don't know how that flow chart works, but I think of it as a weave, even like these factors weave together and support one another. And so if you're working on one aspect well, the other aspects will start developing as, along with it. But the flow chart might be quite interesting. It might be helpful. Yeah, as long as it doesn't get too confusing or daunting to people, because it seems like, oh, it's so much, how am I going to do this? It's like, this seems impossible. This is too complicated. So we have to help ourselves from getting lost into that kind of thinking. But for some people, it might be, helpful too. How do you find that chart? Where does that chart seem to you?
You can just enter a search on Google for Buddha's teaching framework, and then you will find all kind of them. But essentially, I've been trying to understand this for many years, right? And then there is a basic framework that basically encapsulate everything, right? We start with the Four Noble Truths, Eight Noble Path, right? And then, of course, you start out with the Buddha on top, and then the Triple Gem, and then from there you go down. Initially, that was what I was going to create my framework, right? And then from there you go down, and then once you have a basic framework, then you can start putting things in the respective place. But for my understanding, a lot of the Buddha's teaching are basically it's almost like a reiterative, or they are pointing back to each other, right? Just like today's teaching is about the 7 factors of enlightenment, and then you also discuss the 4 foundations of mindfulness. One of them, the Dhammadharini, the Dharma contemplation, actually go into the 5 hindrances, but also discuss the 7 factors of enlightenment, right? So it is actually within the 4 foundations of mindfulness. It's back and forth, right? So at a high level, it is a reiterative process. But for my experience in the beginning, when I start to investigate and learn more about the Dharma, I have more mundane questions, such as like, what is rapture, right? What is piti, right? Have you thought about that, Carl? Like, if what, like the ayah was just describing, 7 factor, the 7 enlightened factor. One of she was describing rapture, piti, right? Now think about it. What is rapture mean? If you are meditating, how do you know that, right? So to me, that is a more basic fundamental question that I'm trying to understand. And then from there, going to passaddhi, tranquility. How do you know, right? So it's a long process, and then one will come to understand, after a lot of practice, after experience, and you know. So
you have to get it in meditation.
Yes.
That helps.
Yes.
And then once you experience it, then you understand.
Yes. So Sherry was just sharing some comment that through meditation, through practice, right? So, and I'm just trying to also explain this to Carl, who was just asking that question. So, that is one of the sensation that, um, you can try to understand, right? Rapture. What is rapture to you? Right?
Yeah,
Have you
so-
thought about that?
Yeah, it's kind of like, I think that we can experience these in our daily life. For instance, if we're keeping our sila well, if we're doing kind acts and generous acts, then we may feel some amount of joy that's not connected with sense pleasures. So this is kind of a little, or another thing that came to my mind when you were talking about the triple gem is that there's this aspect of sada, or faith. And so we hear a teaching, we start to understand what the Buddha's teaching is about. We get some inclining, I don't know, inkling. And so this joy arises. That's and it this inspiration arises in us. So this is a joy, a pleasure that's not involved with sense pleasures. So we starting getting also this what's called pamojas, because we're starting to understand the teaching. So this is preceding actually the PT. So, and then also we can have, from lack of remorse, we can have the peacefulness of the mind. So on they're not developing into, they're not fulfilled as enlightenment factors. They're not fully developed, but we're starting to get a sense of them. And but we need to start with the basics, like developing the mindfulness. This is really a key element in our path, but it's only, like it intersects, like I was like saying, a weave, like you have the Noble Eightfold Path, and that intersects with the enlightenment factors. And so there's like mindfulness appears in a lot of these lists that are supportive to the path, or part of the path, or are the path. I don't know how to say it exactly, but so you start looking at how they all intersect and support one another. And that doesn't have to be overwhelming or confusing if we just take kind of things gradually and maybe work on one of them at a time, how they support one another. So I don't know if that's making sense, but I know from my own journey, it's just been gradually taking one aspect at a time. So
Thank you.
Chris has Chris, could you unmute yourself if you have some question or? Yes.
Can you see me okay? Or
Yeah.
I can't.
Yes.
Oh, okay. There we go. I see myself. Thank you for the talk tonight. I kind of forget the context of when you said this, but you were talking about breathing in cessation and breathing out cessation. So I was wondering if you could maybe explain that more, because I don't really understand.
Oh, That must have been in the Anapanasati Sutta. And so Bhante Sujato actually translates Vedana as sensation, I believe. So the experience of sensation as we're, or feeling as we're breathing in and breathing out. So it talks about the gladdening of and the experience of a rapture. And maybe that Richard was talking about that. And this is like indicating the arising of samadhi. So these sensations do arise in the mind or in the body, both in the body and the mind. As our mind settles, as our mind becomes free of the hindrances, as we're able to sustain our awareness of the breathing, then we can first we're aware of the body and the calming of the body, and then we're aware of the sensation. And then in the Anapanasati Sutta, when it is referring to Vedana, it's talking about the piti arising, the gladness arising. I don't have it all completely memorized, but that is one of the sensations that does arise that's associated with Vedana. And Vedana can be both, can be either and. Pleasant, unpleasant, or both pleasant and unpleasant. So the awareness of that, seeing that, specifically bringing our awareness to those arising in the body and in the mind as well, is one way of understanding that practice, just seeing how these sensations are arising and how they're actually impermanent too. You know, they arise and they pass, they arise and they pass. So that if we're just seeing or just experiencing Vedana, that's what we'll see. It's just the arising and passing of feeling of pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. And it can be based on this five senses and the sixth sense of the mind. But in the Anapanasati Sutta, it's getting more refined. And it's actually the more based on the more pleasant experience. See if I can grab it here quickly. Let's see.
Can I ask like a follow-up question real quick?
Certainly, yes.
So in some situations, like you're talking about how like feelings they come and they go, but sometimes in the past with me, kind of recently, the feeling is very, very extremely intense, like a very intense like a combination of anger and sadness that's very intense. So in that situation, when you tried to sit and meditate in that state of mind, are you putting your focus? Are you just trying to keep it on the breath or the feeling, or yeah, some guidance on that would be nice.
Oh, okay. So if you have an overwhelming experience of unpleasant Vedana at the mind door of the anger or upset or sadness, and so this is actually a hindrance when it's like overwhelming, when it's like the Vedana Nupassana, if you just see the rising and passing and it's just more of a flickering of the unpleasant feeling. The anger or irritation arises and it passes. But if you're like kind of overwhelmed by it, then it's a hindrance, and there are things that we can do to care for it. One thing is, we don't want to get too overwhelmed by it. And if we have what's called in some traditions an antidote, like bringing up thoughts of loving kindness towards oneself in that situation. Anger is countered by loving kindness, and also compassion for yourself. If you're feeling grief or anger, and sometimes the two come together. Like I've had this experience of feeling really angry and then finally able to break through and let go of the anger, and there was grief there, and then I had to go through the grief. So they're sometimes entangled with one another. So anything we can do to care for ourselves, because one thing is that with weightiness, I can see in myself that anger is painful. I can see that I'm causing suffering for myself by being angry. And so I put my careful attention to my body. I can see the tension in my body, have compassion for my, being, that this is, it's an affliction. It's painful. It's difficult. So, do whatever we can do to bring kindness to ourselves, compassion to ourselves, and patience, because this is a life work, and it's taken me quite some time to really let go of anger. And I remember as a layperson, I would just get angry at kind of useless things, like the neighbor was hammering no trespassing signs in the redwood trees, and I would just get furious about things like that. So this is a nutriment for ill will. I mean, I didn't even know the neighbor. I just knew of the person's name. I knew that was their property, and I saw them putting the hammering signs into the redwood trees. And so, but I knew that was foolish, but that was still coming up. I was still feeling angry. And I'd be taking my walk, and instead of enjoying my walk, I was like, the stupid person, blah, blah, blah. And so I remember I was washing dishes, and then this anger was coming up about this neighbor. And then I just stood there and I just said, okay, what's going on in the body? This is not helpful. And sometimes it takes some repetition. We have to be patient. Okay, I can see it arising again. I can see what it's doing. I can see it's distracting. And this is this investigation is a wholesome investigation. And eventually we start unraveling it. I just say, is this helpful to me, being angry? No, it's not helping me. And if I spoke and acted out of this anger, is it going to really solve the problem? If I start yelling at the neighbor or something, if I met him or something, is that going to change things? No, probably not. Is that a skillful way of dealing with it? So, there's a lot of ways you can work with the anger and grief. We just have to have compassion for ourselves. Some of the grief is about not wanting things to be the way they are. We want them to be different, and then there's things that are impossible to, like not the fact that things are impermanent. You know, the fact that people will die, the fact that we will things that we love will be separated from. All these things are you can't change. You know, this is the nature of our life. So that's the first arrow, is the experience of loss, for instance, and the second arrow would be not wanting it to be that way, and resisting it, and so we're tormenting ourselves with. There's this the second dart they talk about so with the resisting it and saying we don't want it this way and it shouldn't be this way, and you know, and so there's this kind of grief that's I mean, it's natural to feel sad, but to really torment ourselves about these things is just harmful to ourselves. So bringing awareness to it, bringing kindness to ourselves, just saying, oh, this is, I'm not really helping myself or changing the situation, and being patient. Yeah, just being kind and patient towards ourselves. So I hope that's helpful.
Hi, this is Carl. I want to say also, trust your intuition. Trust it, because it's the intuition is like the best knowledge that will take you forward in your path. So
Thank you. I was that was very helpful, Aya. Thank you. And I just wanted to add to that. I do I pay attention to the feeling, and it literally feels like poison. Like it feels like actual poison, and I think that's the effect it has on the body too.
Yes.
If it's that intense and it's that prolonged, it will literally poison your body. So, but thank you for that explanation. I really appreciate it, and I'll try to apply it.
You're welcome. And there's something about like being aware of something and trying to avoid indulging in something like anger or grief. So you start to discern, you know, and if it's a habit pattern, it's going to take time to change, but you could, like, you're seeing that how, like I was saying, I saw how it was affecting my body to be angry, and you're seeing a poison. So eventually just be, you know, being kind and say, oh, I see this habit, it's you know, but eventually we'll start catching it sooner and not get so deep into it that it gets to the point where we're poisoning ourselves. So
Thank you so much.
yes, you're welcome. Oh, it's after 9 o'clock. So I guess I'm being reminded, but I really appreciate everybody's kind attention. And yeah, we just have to start where we are on the path. Like I was saying, even if it's just like packing our supplies and seeing that we're leaving, we don't want to carry all this unnecessary baggage with us that's going to weight us down. So some of it is like saying, I'm not going to keep carrying this stuff along with me. So I'm wishing you all joy and peacefulness and progress on the path. So we can end with homage to the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. This is one of these things that can bring joy to us, as our devotion and gratitude to the Triple Gem. And if you know it, I'll say both the Pali and the English. So whatever you know, you can join along with me. Araham Sama Sambuddho Bhagawa, the Lord, the perfectly enlightened and blessed one. Buddham Bhagavantam Abhivademi.
I render homage to the Buddha, the blessed one.
Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo, the teaching so completely explained by him. Dhammam namasami, I bow to the Dhamma. Supatipanno Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho, the Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well. Sangham Namami, I bow to the Sangha. Thank you all for your kind attention, and I want to thank Seminary Tavira for all her kind technical support in the chanting, because sometimes it's hard for me to track both the English and the Pali. So
Thank you. I three
Here's
bow
a-
to the teacher.
Sabe Buddha Balapata Pachekanancha Yambalam Arhantanancha Tejena Rakambandami Sabaso. May the triple gem protect you internally and externally. May you all
Thank you, Aya.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, may you all be well, happy, and
Thank you,
peaceful.
Aya.
You're welcome. Good seeing you.
Thank you. Blessings.
You're welcome. Bye.